It's alive! It's alive! I have shavings! Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. We are going to be doing another step in building this plane. In the past we've been cutting out the escapement and now we're going to get onto the wedge, and by the end of this video we're going to have a functioning plane that will take shavings and curls that look absolutely gorgeous. So what all do we need to do? We need to cut the wedge and do a little more shaping. If you'd like to see all of this information in a very quick format in about 10 minutes, I have another video on that. In this series I'm actually going through step by step and taking all the detail and talking through everything that I'm doing to make this plane so you can make it yourself. Also, if you'd like to see plans on it, I do have those on my website, so I have all of the measurements and drawings that you need to make your own plane, and you can see a link to that in the description down below. So today we're going to be making the wedge and fitting it and making everything actually functional so we can get some curls. So let me stop talking and let's dive in. So for the wedge in this, I have this piece of epay that I picked up when I was out at SV Seeker. It's a very hard, dense wood, but this particular piece is really nice straight grain and will work really well for a wedge. And most importantly, it's about the right thickness, so I don't have to do much to bring it down to the right thickness. I'm going to have to cut it down to a little over 2 inches wide by about 5 inches long, and then we'll start cutting the taper on the end. So let's cut this to shape and then cut the taper. Now, according to the plans, this mouth is 2 1/16 inch wide, so I should cut this to 2 1/16 inch. It should fit in perfectly. But I don't like doing that. I actually like to fit this in and change this thickness until it fits this gap perfectly. I want to be able to slide all the way down in there. So I've got a little less than 1/16 to take off. So I can set this in here and plane it down to the thickness until it fits in. And I'm really close, nice and tight there, nice and tight there. So a couple more passes and we'll be good. Okay, so there we have a good fit. It slides in there nicely until it gets to the wedging point. And so now we need to cut an angle on this at 10 degrees. So from a point here all the way back. Now my bevel gauge doesn't go all the way to 10 degrees. It stops at like 12 degrees. So I'm going to put it as far as I can. And then I'm going to draw a line on here. And I don't really care too much about what exact is because I want to fit it to the plane body. But this line will give me a little bit of a visual reference so I know what I'm kind of shooting at. So I'll put it on that side, then do it on this side, and then we're going to plane this down to be close to that angle. So now I've got a scrub plane, and I'm just going to rough this down. I have that line pretty much parallel to the bench, so that I can just kind of go flat. Just try to take off large chunks at a time. So then occasionally put it in there and check it and see how close we are, what angle I need to be. That just kind of gives me an idea. And I'm going to put it on the bed without having any iron in there so I get a good reading of what that angle needs to be. Then go back and address it just as I see. Then after doing that, put it in, check it again, and I'm trying to make that angle as accurate and clean as possible. That looks pretty close. So now that we have a good fit with the wedge and the angle matches the angle that we cut in there, I want to put the iron in and then slide this in, but this little bolt is sticking up. We need to cut a little recess in the bottom of the wedge to fit that. But I don't want that recess to come all the way up to the tip. I'm actually going to slide it in a little ways until it starts to interfere with it, and then just couple light taps will mark where it is on that. And then I want to carve a groove from here back a ways, straight in line with that, so that this will then sit up inside the wedge. Another thing I just decided is in the plans I had a notch out in the front, which is a fairly common thing for a traditional wedge. You'd have this notch that basically makes it easier to get your fingers in there so that you can remove curls. It just removes a little bit of the space in there. But because this is such a low angle, there's already a large chunk of space in here, I don't really need to make that notch. So I'm going to try it without that and see if there's any difference, but I don't think I'm going to need to cut out that notch on this one. So to cut that little groove out, I'm going to set my marking gauge in here, and see if I've got the same amount on both sides. And basically just going to create two lines coming back. Those lines will just give me a visual reference for how I want that groove to go. I want it to be nice and straight and clean. And I may end up cutting out those lines, but those will at least let me know I'm aiming in the right direction and not veering off down this. I'm going to get a carving gouge with a fairly steep cut. This one is a number 7, and then just gouge it out from one end to the other. And I'll come back and do this deeper a couple times because the screw is actually fairly deep. So one from that side. Then I can bring the iron over and make sure that screw fits in there and slides nicely. And we're good to go. Let's actually test this sucker out. Slide the iron in. The iron's got to go down around there. And then the wedge. Whoo, dilly. Good and tight there. Good and tight there. That's what I'm looking for. Nice, clean lines. You can see how it fits the corner all the way down to the point where it stops. So that's right about what I'm looking for. I might actually open that mouth up a little bit more so the wedge can slide down a little farther. I'd like it to come down about another ½ inch further. So I think I'm going to take off a little bit on those wings and make those just a hair bigger. So now we have a wedge that is fit and seated and where I want it to be. The next thing I need to do is open up the mouth ever so slightly. The iron here is actually touching the front of the mouth all the way across. And what I want to do is stick a file in there and clean that out so that there's a tiny, tiny gap, just the thickness of a shaving between the front of the mouth and the tip of the iron. I want that gap to be really nice and tight. So let's pull this iron out and give it a try. Now what I want to do is stick the file in here. And file that mouth open just a hair. So I'm going to do this back and forth probably 5 or 6 times. Slide the iron in, file the mouth just a little bit, slide the iron in, file the mouth just a little bit. And each time I'm going to see if the iron sticks out, and if so, is there any gap in front. I still have a little bit more to go, but it's getting close. So pull it out, file it again, pull it out, file it again, and I'll show you what I'm looking for with a tight mouth here in a moment. So there we have it. Now the front of that mouth, I don't know if you can see that opening, but there's a tiny, tiny sliver of an opening running all the way along it. And that's what I'm looking for. I want a very, very tight mouth all the way across. A tight mouth, a close chip breaker, and then we can actually give this thing a test. So let's actually try it on its first piece. Scrap of pine. Yeah, it's a bit heavy, but it's taking a curl. Let's try and do something a little bit thinner. That's probably nothing. Nothing. There we go. Now we're talking. See, now these are the curls that I'm looking for, the ones that you can see through. Beautiful gossamer shavings. That I love. So now we have a working, functioning plane. It is ready to go. It takes curls. The sole on this isn't completely flat. I'm actually taking a little bit of a heavy shaving on one side. And so I've got to do a little bit of cleanup on it and then actually shape it, because man, this is really uncomfortable and this doesn't look all that good. But we actually have a functioning plane. So if you wanted to, you could stop here and have a lot of fun getting off perfect curl after perfect curl. Wahoo-da! We have a working plane. Now, if you'd like to see plans on this and actually see some of the dimensions and drawings I have, you can do this yourself. I have plans for that on my website. I have a link to that down in the description below. It's really not as hard as people make it seem. It's something, if you just take it step by step, it becomes fairly simple. Just don't expect perfection on your first try. A lot of the traditional masters make this seem a very difficult task to get a shaving with wood. And if you look at the planes that people have made in the past, they have this intricacy and style to them. That's nice, but it's not necessary. So you can make a functioning plane without doing all the carving and shaping, but in the next video we'll get into all that carving and shaping. I do have to say I'm sorry for the audio on this. I recorded all of it before I realized the gain on my microphone was way off, so I'll try to be fixing that in future videos, but all of the build videos on this I did before checking it. Oops. So that's about it for this video. I do want to say thank you to those who are on Patreon and those helping with the Super Chat. You guys are really the reason why this channel is here and still happening. So if you'd like to help out with that, if I'm on a live event, you can help out with Super Chat as well as in Patreon right down there. Or you can subscribe, like, and share. Those are things that really helps this channel grow. Also, I have my second channel here with some behind the scenes video and things like that. That's about it for today. Until next time, have a wonderful day.